lesson 21. We just passed half of the course, just entered the second half of the course. Last week we read up until Sutra 10 of chapter 2, so we will continue with Sutra 11. Sutra 1 to 10 introduce Nadishadana Pranayama. That's complete. Sutra 11 then tells us one should practice well kumbhakas 4 times a day. In the early morning, midday, evening, and midnight. Gradually till they number 80. So like with most sutras, it sounds more like a riddle, except the first part is pretty clear. Kumbhaka is usually a word used to refer to each of those pranayama exercises. So the sutra tells us we should practice pranayama at 4 different times of the day. What does that mean? That you have to practice 4 times a day? No. This is about energy. Energy, although omnipresent, is very unfamiliar to most people. So now we went to great length to introduce the possibility of controlling energy. We've reached the point that we start with our first exercise. But energy is still unfamiliar territory. The exercises have an impact on the practitioner. And that impact is different depending on the time that you practice. Why? Because in nature, energy is constantly fluctuating, is waxing and waning, increasing, diminishing. Not only that, your condition likewise is fluctuating throughout the day and the night. And the reason that Svatmarama advises us to practice at different times of the day is to help us understand energy better. Not only the exercise, but also ourselves, the way that we function, the way that one particular energy control exercises can influence us in different ways depending on the time of the day and the night, depending on the condition that we are in at the moment that we practice the exercise. But that's why. And when you experience that, you not only become better familiar with the effect of the exercise, because each pranayama has its own distinct purpose and effect, but also, and very importantly, it helps you to become familiar with your condition. It helps you, it enables you, it gives you the ability more and more to establish, to determine the current condition you are in at a particular time of the day or the night. That is very important because the different pranayamas have different purposes and thus different effects. And in the end, once you are familiar with them, after having practiced them on a regular basis for a certain amount of time, you are familiar with them, you then start picking a pranayama based on your assessment of your condition. So you say, today my energy is quite low. I'm rather tamas. The exercise that reduces tamas by increasing rajas is the exercise I need to do today in order to restore balance. And the other way around. When you're in an agitated state, in an energized state, and your mind is restless, there is a particular exercise that compensates that if you do that exercise. So to become familiar with that, we have to become familiar with the concept of energy, which we have gone through the process now. And now we have to become familiar with our condition, which is based on energy, and how the pranayama affects us depending on the condition that we are in. Now there is a mysterious ending to this sutra, where Svatmarama says, gradually till they number 80 each time. Thomas last week correctly asked, how do you know that there is a ratio of 1, 4, 2, 4? It isn't mentioned anywhere. That's correct. What is mentioned here is that the ultimate count is 80. 80, 320, 160, 320. We know about the ratio. First of all, the sutras mention very distinctly that there are 4 stages. It mentions there is an inflow, followed by a kumbhaka, there is an outflow, followed by another kumbhaka. So that is clear. What is not clear from the text anywhere is that distinct ratio of 1, 4, 2, 4. And that we have learned through the mentors of Ajita, among which is Dr. Sharma, Dr. Hari Upadhyay, and Swami Yoganand from Kathmandu. The yogis that wander around Europe to enlighten mankind, so to speak. Their influence is not to be underestimated. If you see Ajita as a vessel, they have infused him with ancient knowledge that has been passed on through generations, mostly word of mouth. And if you look at this, Ajita has had such an enormous influence on Dutch society with the thousands of students that he has trained throughout the years. All over the country, there are yoga institutes that are either teaching his system, what you are learning here, including the pranayama and the mudras and everything, or they are very greatly influenced by his teachings. And no doubt about it that it is actually really making a difference in society at large. And that is the holy duty of those wandering yogis, is to spread real knowledge, spread esoteric science for the betterment of mankind. And look, here we are from the Netherlands. We transplanted ourselves to the other side of the world, and we continue that work. Sutra 12. In the first stage, there's perspiration. In the second, tremor is felt. And in the highest stage, the energy goes to the chief place. So one should control the energy. This sounds very dramatic. Perspiration. and tremor. However, these are synonyms. I think I may have explained last week, because another sutra explaining or concluding Nadishodhana Pranayama used exactly the same concept of perspiration and tremor. And I explained, perspiration is a synonym for rajas. Tremor is synonym for tamas. And Brahma, or the chief place, Brahmarandra, that is synonym for sattva, but then also Brahmarandra is the crown chakra, the cavity of God, which is the condition. The crown chakra functions when there is sattva. So Nadishodhana Pranayama starts with increasing Shakti in the first cycle. You let Shakti in and you let Shiva out. So you are left with a domination of Shakti, which leads to a Rajas condition, here called perspiration. First there is perspiration. The second stage, the second cycle, you let Shakti out and you let Shiva in, resulting in tamas. So exactly in accordance with the sutra. You start increasing rajas, then you start increasing tamas, and in the end you end up in the middle. So first you go a little bit too high, then you come down a little bit from that high, and you end up nicely in the middle, leading to sattva, allowing the crown chakra or Brahmarandra, the cavity of God, to open up and to function, allowing you all those wonderful characteristics that are latently present in every living being to manifest. So one should control the energy. So Svatmarama is telling us that pranayama has a significant importance in the whole framework of our practice, because it helps us to control our condition. And in the end, the desired condition is sattva. 13, Sutra 13, rub on the body the perspiration resulting from fatigue. By this, the body derives firmness and lightness. This does not only apply to pranayama. Remember, when we do asana, we engage, but before we move on to the next exercise, we always take a little break. That is symbolically called rubbing on the body the perspiration resulting from fatigue. The exercise, the engagement in asana, but also with the pranayama, triggers an effect. But that effect finds its place, settles down during the kumbhaka stage, and in the asana, it finds its it settles down, or it finds its effect in these little rests that you take in between. And you must have noticed, when you practice asana, that it is not the engagement that gives you a really good feeling. It is what happens after the engagement. When you come out of the pose and you close your eyes for a moment and you take a deep breath and you say, wow, this is so nice. That nice feeling, that is what you experience when there is sattva. And that is what happens if you do asana correctly. And it happens also when you meditate and you add a pranayama exercise. and you follow the right procedure. Inflow, kumbhaka, settle down. Outflow, kumbhaka, settle down. And then you switch to nada concentration, which is more focused, more intense than it was ever before. You started with the pranayama exercise. So what this means in the hectic world that we live in is take your time. Not only with your yoga, not only with your asana or your pranayama, everything. Because what you learn here superficially applies to yoga, but in reality it's really about life in general. It means take your time for everything, for change, for getting things done. Take some time to sit down and reflect on what you have just done before you go on to the next activity or the next busy engagement. Apply this in your work, apply this in your daily personal life, private life, in relationships. You will see that the word gradual comes back also many times. Sutra 14. In the early stages of practice, food mixed with milk and ghee is prescribed as the best diet. But when practice has advanced, such restrictions need not be observed. Food mixed with milk and ghee. Why milk and ghee? Milk and ghee were the superfoods of the ancient people. Now you go to the downstairs convenience store and you buy a can of Red Bull, or you go to Starbucks and you get a cup of coffee with caffeine. Ancient people didn't have those luxuries, but milk and ghee were luxuries indeed, were not easy to obtain. But they were full of protein, full of vitamins, minerals, full of nutrients overall. And the reason why Svatmarama tells you that in the beginning, when you start practicing yoga, dedicating your time to practicing yoga, you should add these superfoods to your diet. That is because you have lived in an unconditioned state since you were born. One day as a teenager or in your 20s or 30s, you discover yoga, you start practicing yoga on a regular basis. Especially the way this was designed, you would dedicate practically full time to your yoga practice. In the past, when you decided to pick up the practice of yoga, you would probably go into isolation, join some kind of a community of yoga practitioners or a temple or something, and for a certain period of time, for a year or more, you would dedicate yourself to the practice and study of yoga, the science of yoga. That means that you turn things upside down, physically, energetically, and that is very demanding on your body. So your body requires extra nutrients, more than usual. But he also clearly says, once you have gotten used to the new condition, you can eliminate those superfoods again. You don't need them anymore. As the lion, elephant, or tiger is tamed gradually, even so should energy be brought under control, else it will kill the practitioner. Lion, elephant, or tiger are called wild animals, wild beasts, for a reason. They kill people, and they're very difficult to control, very difficult to handle. But there are examples of lions, elephants, and tigers being tamed. And the process of taming such wild beasts is very elaborate, is a very arduous process in which you have to work with the animal, connect with the animal, befriend the animal, win the trust of the animal in order to recondition it, in order to get it to the point that it kind of starts to react to instructions, starts to obey. The word gradual here, I highlighted it in my book. You will see it, that word will come back a lot more often. Gradual. Never be in a hurry. You want change in your life? Just start with the first step. And when time comes, you take the second step, etc. Every time you rush, it leads to stress, but not only that, it leads to failure. It leads to blocked energy. So you try to do things in life, not only with your yoga exercise, but in general, gradually. You have a lifetime to accomplish what you set out to do. Start living accordingly, because most people, when they want something, they want it yesterday. Not today, not tomorrow, they want it yesterday. They're in a hurry, they're greedy, full of desire, and they can't canalize that, they can't control that. Else it will kill the practitioner. There are stories of, especially from the corner of Kundalini Yoga, which, if done correctly, focuses on the direct awakening of Kundalini energy. There are stories floating around about people getting into serious trouble because of something going wrong with Kundalini Yoga. What can go wrong? What I have noticed with people who have been subjected to forms of yoga where developments are forced with violent exercises, violent techniques, is a little bit the symptoms that you find with people who have experienced with drugs. People whose consciousness awakens too sudden and too fast, cannot handle the enormous stream of new impressions that they've never experienced before. So with certain drugs this happens as well, LSD for example, but smoking of marijuana also can lead to a widening consciousness and lead to people becoming emotionally distressed, even paranoia. So gradual is again the key here. It's not contained in this sutra, or it is actually contained in this sutra. The word kill should not be taken literally here, that it will kill the practitioner if we don't tame the wild beast or the energy gradually. But the way that we practice yoga, there is no need to worry about those stories floating around about the dangers of Kundalini, the sudden awakening of Kundalini exercise leading to psychological or emotional distress. The simple reason is that if you practice yoga according to the framework that we have here, the awakening of your consciousness and the increase of sensitivity takes place, you guessed it, gradually. And because of that, you have time to adjust, to adapt, and to familiarize yourself with the new condition of consciousness and sensitivity. If consciousness and sensitivity happen with a bang, it can bring people into very serious trouble. Yoga can do that, but it is in the same way happening with drugs that widen consciousness. Most drugs basically do widen consciousness, some more strongly than others. 16. Through the proper practice of pranayama, along with the right food and proper bandhas, there is freedom from all diseases. By a mistaken course of yoga, the practitioner brings all diseases upon themselves. Well, like I just said before, yoga can cause distress, emotionally, especially. Throughout the years, I've had people visiting us who were in fact very fanatic yoga practitioners and did not understand why they were suffering so much, why they were crying so much, why they were feeling so good in one way, while in the other way they would feel so upset, sad, just emotionally unstable. And the reason for that is, if you practice yoga without actually understanding how it works, what it does to the practitioner, you undergo all the transformations subconsciously. And that is why yoga is a complete system that should be respected as a whole. Because you have noticed probably that yoga does indeed increase consciousness, awareness, and sensitivity. But it is not subconscious, because every time we have a class, we talk about these things. Every time it is explained, first of all, that it is expected to happen, but also how you deal with those changes, how you deal with returning memories from the past, traumatic experiences, increased awareness of people, other people's suffering, etc. Then when you know how to deal with that when you know that it is expected to happen, you can canalize that energy. You can deal with it in a positive and a constructive way. So by a mistaken course of yoga is a course of yoga that is not complete. So the exercises may be correct, but then there is no proper guidance. Then there is no proper discussions of the underlying philosophy that basically address all the issues that we bump into as yoga practitioners with increasing sensitivity and awareness. The proper course of yoga is the eightfolded path that starts with yama niyama, followed by asana, pranayama, pratyahara, and then the 3 steps of meditation, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi, and the study of the Holy Scriptures. 17, to rub it in a little bit more, a wrong course of pranayama produces hiccup, asthma, bronchial diseases, pains in the head, ears and eyes, and various other diseases. What I've noticed myself throughout the years is that when we concentrate too hard on the pranayama exercise, where we try to accelerate the inflow or try to accelerate the outflow by applying pressure mentally using thought. It can lead to headaches, it can lead to discomfort in the facial muscles, the eyeballs can become tense and unpleasant, uncomfortable. So, gradual. Go through the steps, but do it very leisurely. Stay focused, but no rush, no pressure, just go. And very important in all this is that you trust that it works. Because the main reason why we want to rush, why we want to increase pressure, is because this is subtle, we don't see direct result, and we think, this is not working, I have to try harder. And when we try harder, that is when the discomfort starts. 18. One should gradually efflux the energy and as gradually draw it in. One should also restrain it gradually. Thus, siddhi is obtained. 3 times the word gradual in one sentence. Thus, siddhi is obtained. Have I explained siddhi? Yoga promises the development of siddhis, which are what we call paranormal or supernatural abilities. We call them paranormal and supernatural, but actually they are very normal and very natural. Only they don't manifest in unconditioned people. What are siddhis? What are supernatural or paranormal abilities? These are all abilities that are based on hypersensitivity. Hyper sounds negative. On increased sensitivity, increased perception. You start picking up on energies from other people, even from the other side of the world. When you think about your mom, suddenly the phone rings and you pick up the phone and it's your mom and you say, hey, that's a coincidence. But actually it's not a coincidence. You have subconsciously picked up a vibration. Either your mom was thinking about you and she picked up the phone to call you, to talk with you, or the other way around. You thought about your mom and your mom picked up on that vibration. So, siddhis are in fact, they're surrounded by a lot of mystery. And if you read the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, there are some creepy siddhis described there. There are 30 in total described. And one of them is, for example, the act that Jesus Christ performed of waking up a dead person, but increased perception, including, and very importantly, the perception of energies, subtle energies, the vibrations that are out there that normal people do not pick up on. You have a dream in which a person's presence is very strong, and when you wake up, the dream is still very clear. Then you know that there is something going on with that person, often in distress. Normal dreams, when you wake up, you don't remember at all, or very, very vaguely. But when you have a very clear dream, so that is considered a siddhi, that you connect with people that are far out of reach, something that normal people will reject as even being possible. We call them supernatural and paranormal, but each and every one of you will gradually develop siddhis even before you realize that they're already there. You will be more receptive, more sensitive compared to other people. But gradual. imprint that word into your mind gradual, because it will allow you to breathe in your daily life as opposed to being stressed and in a hurry and unsatisfied and what have you. Gradual. If you can approach things gradual in life, you will see that you will be much more successful in the things that you are pursuing. And the opposite is also true. When you do not approach things gradually, chances of failure are much higher. Chances of conflict arising in the process of your pursuit is just much higher. 19. When the nadis are purified, there are external signs. Leanness and brightness of the body are definitely produced. You become healthier, stronger, more energetic, and definitely the quality of your physical body will improve overall. You will feel better, your sense of well-being will improve. I think last time I touched upon an issue that is kind of an irony in yoga, that is that we are healthy. And when you're healthy, you do not realize the enormous impact that yoga has on one's condition. But we talked about the people that were dealing with chronic diseases who had tremendous benefit by their yoga practice in general, but especially benefit of practicing pranayama, which helped them make their chronic disease manageable without the heavy medicines prescribed by the medical professionals. If possible, give it a chance. Although you are not in a dire need for healing, although you are maybe not dealing with a chronic disease that medicine can solve, try to practice pranayama for a month on a daily basis, and then see how it affects you. Even though you are healthy and not in dire need, because you're not suffering from, luckily, not suffering from any chronic diseases, but try it out and see how it even impacts a healthy person. Because the impact is real. And like we talked last week about the difference between breathing exercise and energy control exercise, the impact that practice of pranayama has is simply unachievable if you would practice pranayama as a breathing exercise. So it really works, but you have to prove it to yourself simply by giving it a chance. Have the discipline to practice for a certain period of time on a daily basis. It must be done on a regular basis, just to prove to yourself that it really works. Pranayama or yoga in general is like, what do you call this alternative medicine where you drink diluted concoctions? Homeopathic medicine. Homeopathic medicine is like yoga. You have to take it every day to make it work. If you just take one drink of homeopathic medicine or one bite or whatever it is, it won't work. Just like yoga practiced only once or only once in a while will not really have a deep effect. If you practice regularly, or if you take the medicine regularly, it truly starts to transform things. It truly starts to have an effect, a deep effect. The last sutra for this session, 20. When one is able to restrain the energy as desired, when the gastric fire becomes more active and the nada is heard, there is perfect health, because the nadis are purified. The gastric fire is that phenomenon of those 3 chakras in your belly becoming one big ball of energy, which leads to the generation of vital energy. In Korean you call that Ki energy, in Chinese you call it Qi energy. It's prana or Agni. Agni means fire. Often confused with digestion, but the digestion of course gets better in the process too. But digestive fire and gastric fire are in fact 2 different things. Notice that nada is mentioned here. Notice also that most yoga teachers have never heard of nada. And that is strange. This is the fundament of yoga, and every self-respecting yogi should at least have some knowledge of the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, or learn from teachers who have this book as a fundament in their development as a teacher. The chance is also there that people read this book because they are involved with yoga as a teacher or as a practitioner, and they read this sutra and they come across the word nada, and it just doesn't ring a bell. It just doesn't have meaning. So they just read over it and they move on to the next sutra. But as you have noticed, the very first class I explained nada, and almost nobody heard it. Or you heard it, but you were not aware of it. Now everybody hears it. And once you are familiar with it and you read a text like this, you say, aha, it's confirmed. Nada is not just something that my teacher made up, or no, it's mentioned in a very old text here. It is part of what we do in yoga, and actually it's a very powerful tool to guide us in our meditations. Interesting also is that nada is mentioned here in the context that the healthier you are, the clearer nada becomes. Nada, there is a difference between clear and noisy. When you're very tired or sick, nada is noisy, is loud. Because nada is accompanied by the inflow of Shiva energy, which is responsible for recovery. So usually in the evening when you come home from a long day of work, what many people do subconsciously is they drop their things. They drop their bag, their laptop, and they sit down just for a moment. They just sit down, staring at the wall or the aquarium or the ceiling. And they're buzzing out, literally listening to nada without knowing that they're listening to nada. Because nada, at that moment, at the end of the day, is loud. Because you're tired and you're sucking in large amounts of Shiva energy, which is accompanied by loud nada. However, when you're overall in a very good health, which means that your energy is circulating freely and in large amounts, which is the purpose of Nadi Shodhana Pranayama, to cleanse the energy channels, nada becomes not loud but clear. If just for a moment you think of nada, it's there, very easy. I hear it all the time, throughout the day. If I pay attention, it's there. It's here now. It's there all the time. The healthier you are, the more present it is. Because nada is energy. The more energy you have, the more energy circulates, the more nada there will be. Okay, questions?
One question.
Yes, go ahead.
It talks about doing pranayama every day.
Yep.
Do you recommend always doing it after asana, or can it be done separately from asana?
Ideally, you build up starting with asana, pranayama, meditation. Because one reinforces the other. But most of us are busy. We have jobs to perform or families to take care of. And if you don't have time, enough time to do a whole session where you practice asana as a preparation for pranayama, and then pranayama as a preparation for a good meditation, which would take you an hour or more. If you don't have time for that, it's better to break it up than to not do it at all. So it's always better to do something, even though it's not perfect, than to not do it at all. So you could maybe do asana in the morning, which is when you need it most, because it awakens the body, and with that the mind, of course. And start your day after asana practice, and then in the evening or maybe somewhere in the afternoon, if you can find time, you then practice pranayama and meditation together. But pranayama and meditation better go together. Better not be separated. Why? That is a practical reason. When you practice pranayama, you have moved your energy with the purpose of coming to sattva. That sattva occurs during the time you spend meditating. And it doesn't have to be an hour. It can, if you're short on time, at least do not just do your pranayama and then finish. At least take 5 or 10 minutes to concentrate on nada. Because that is where the magic happens. That is where the effect settles in that you trigger with the practice of the pranayama. And asana, of course, too. You practice asana alone. If you do it correctly, it's very effective. If it's followed by a short meditation, it's even more effective. But be practical. Remember the words gradual. And it's embedded in the yamas and the niyamas. Contentment. Practice contentment. Be satisfied with what you can do, as opposed to being dissatisfied with what you can't do. So if you can do a little bit, be happy that you actually did. Be satisfied with the fact that you could actually have just done that little bit, as opposed to being unsatisfied with what you couldn't do. The answers lie all in the yamas and the niyamas. Answers to basically everything. Okay, let's have a short break before we start with the asanas.